Our next session is Education Policy in 2026. What's working, what's broken, what's next? We'll dive into these critical questions and explore how we can create a more effective, inclusive, and future-ready learning environment. Get ready for a conversation that challenges perspectives and sparks new possibilities. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming our moderators. We have Dr. Tonya Cannon, the lead faculty at Westcliff University, and Dr. Donna Vallese, the chief educational luminary at Educational Luminaries. And our panelists, we have Sheila J. Simpson, the executive director at FOCCUS Marriage Ministries. And we have Jillayne Flanders, the consultant of early childhood education at Center for Educational Improvement, as well as Dr. Angelica Benavides, for co-founder of Education Luminaries at B Global Publisher, and John Tobin, the professor at Pepperdine GSEP. Let's give them a big round of applause. Welcome.
I'll be right there. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Oh, we've got a little good mornings there. Oh, let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. Oh, it's so much better. We don't have that. Well, today we want to talk about some educational policy, and I think most people that come here to Education 2.0, this is my fourth time being here at this conference, you are going to find some like-minded people here. And we know that education needs to shift and change, and it's way behind. And now that AI is open to the public, we're way behind, and we're falling further and further behind. So we're not going to focus only on AI today, but really also dive into the human element, to the curricular element, to that policy element that is preventing our schools from actually moving forward. We are stuck in old systems, and our policies and practices are not allowing us to get out. So, without further ado, I am Dr. Donna. I am the CEO of Inspiring Leaders and co-founder with Dr. B over here, right in the center. She is a publisher. We have a table in the back, Educational Luminaries, where we publish great innovators in education into collaborative books. So that's a little bit about me. I would like the rest of the panel to introduce themselves.
We'll just go down the list. So I'm Dr. Tonya Cannon. I am lead faculty at Westcliff University. I teach also at UCLA Extension and Delaware State University. I have been an educator for about 18 years. I have been a practicing HR professional for over 30 years. And it might also interest you to know I'm a filmmaker. So I bring a lot of that into writing and creating characters that people relate to. So without further ado.
And good morning. I'm delighted to have you all here. I'm Judge John Tobin, and I'm a retired federal judge. I was the chief judge of the Social Security Court in Long Beach, California. But I've had the real privilege of teaching at Pepperdine's Graduate School of Education and Psychology for 23 years. And for an adjunct to have that long a tenure is pretty good. But Pepperdine's been extremely good to me. I teach organizational leadership and change theory, and I'm delighted to engage in conversations on those topics with you this morning.
And good morning. I am Angelica Benavides, best known as Dr. B, and I'm considered the ultimate legacy builder. I am a global chair person for Leaders of All Nation International. I am also a publisher, B Global Publisher, and I'm a co-founder of Improve Ed Exchange, where we're trying to revolutionize the educational system and creating roundtable discussions to really dive into what needs to be changed and what's really working, to have that deep research that's going to impact and make a difference.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jill Flanders. I am a mom and a grandma, and it's the grandma part that's really stuck with me the most over the last few years. I have been retired from being an elementary principal where I worked in 2 different schools over 27 years. But during that time, became focused on early childhood education. And that's where the focus with the grandchildren has really come back to. During my retirement, I have now been executive director of a couple of nonprofit organizations focused on early childhood education and educating the whole child, which we'll have a chance to talk about a little here, because most of all, we cannot lose sight of the fact that we are here educating children, and they are going to be leading us in the near future. So that's kind of my background. There's some books and there's some other stuff, but most importantly, being a grandma.
Nice. I'm Sheila Simpson. I'm the executive director of FOCCUS Marriage Ministries. We're a nonprofit international organization, been in business for over 40 years, and we help engaged and married couples. Where I come into this is we have trained facilitators, which is adult education, that meet with the engaged and married couples to read the results of an inventory test. So I'm more in the practical side of things, not so much the academic, but we have learned a lot about how to train our facilitators, and we're in 21 different languages.
Fantastic. So up here we have a wide range of experiences from early childhood, K-12, higher education, adult education, and those are all similar but different realms, and they all have their unique problems. So I think I want to open the question for our panel, and for all of you to start to contemplate is, if you had policymakers right in front of you, and let's keep in mind, a lot of policymakers know very little about education other than they went to school, they experienced teaching and learning in a certain way, and that's all they know, right? So if you had policymakers in front of you, what do you want them to know about what's working so they know what not to change?
I think I'm just going to answer this. It's like I feel really strong about that we should not be focused in like working on preparing our students for taking tests. Instead, we should prepare them for lifelong skill learners, entrepreneurship, and getting real world skills instead of just preparing them for a test. I am completely against that. So if they were in front of me, it's like I would truly talk about
I
that.
cannot agree more, Dr. B. We did it right in this country with a public education policy back in the 1800s. What we've done wrong is stick to it. The format that was chosen really is a conveyor belt, and that's not where we live right now. But we did start by looking at the whole child, by thinking about the fact that they come from a family unit, that no 3-year-old goes to school on their own. They go to school with everyone else that's been with them from birth. And then how do we support that initial learning with their family and move them into the system that does need to be changed? So in terms of policy, yes, public education, it's a good thing. You're probably all a product of it. But what needs to change is, how do we now adapt to where we are in this world and all of the amazing technological, scientific, I want to talk about the moon, but that's not on our list today, all of these things that are part of our world that make sense now, and thinking about the future.
And I just want to say that we want this to be an interactive session, so please feel free to speak up if you have thoughts. My thought on this particular issue is that Respectfully, I don't know how respectfully this is going to be received, but respectfully, policymakers don't know if they're a foot or horseback, honestly, in a lot of the sense. And I think that is what has created sort of this conveyor belt, this, I can't think of the word, but conveyor, I guess will do, of one size fits all in education, and it just doesn't. I think some of you heard me speak at the earlier panel about the VARC framework. Some of our students are visual learners, some are auditory learners, some are kinesthetic learners, et cetera. And we need to be able to speak to those various elements and test and assess to that, as opposed to, well, this is how we're doing it, and get on board or sucks to be you kind of a thing. I'm very kind of direct, so apologies if that's too much.
I want to encourage you, whether you have a thought or not, say something. Join in this conversation. The paradigm, the environment for higher education and all of education is rapidly changing. The notion of the conveyor belt, of the assembly line, is just no longer effective or useful. We have, at my university, we have people that are 60, 26, and all points in between. Some of them were last in school 5 to 10 years ago. But now they're coming back, taking the next step. And schools and institutions of education have to be sensitive to the fact that the lockstep process of years past is not only unattractive, but inefficient and not particularly useful.
And I guess from an employer standpoint, what I'm saying missing is the kids that are coming out to get the jobs know the technology, they know how to text really well, but they don't know how to write an email. And my customers expect an email to say, dear so-and-so, and thank you so-and-so, and some context in between versus two words, even though they didn't text it, they wrote it in an email.
I certainly agree, but here's where I disagree. No one said anything about doing away with structure, rigor, discipline.
Right.
And I teach at the graduate level, and it terrifies me that we are letting these people loose with PhDs
Yes.
who don't even remember the Vietnam War. Now, I realize I'm dating myself, but be that as it may. Their situational awareness, as we used to call it in the military, is lacking. They are so focused on one thing, getting through. My favorite example of a failing student is the one who comes up to me and says, "Professor, tell me what an A paper for this course looks like." And I said, "I'll know that as soon as you write it. But what someone else has done in the previous classes has no relevance to what you can do. And that's what we're looking for. What can you do?"
Yeah.
And,
Go
go ahead. No, go ahead.
So I also want to add, because it's actually going to pivot into the next question that I have bubbling up in my head here. States, I'll give you an example. So for instance, New York State, where I live, we have new policies in place around Portrait of a Graduate. They spent 3 years going around to companies, organizations, parents, schools. They put a whole new vision together of what a graduate needs to look like right now. And it's a great plan. And I've done the work that is underlying that, but our systems are not allowing that. We keep adding more and more and more, and now teach this content and teach this content. Our teachers are so overloaded with all of the content that they have to teach to prepare their kids for those tests that we're not getting to those basic skills. And so when you talk about literacy and you're talking about grammar and writing, they should be reading, writing, and understanding and communicating in every single class. Every teacher is a reading and writing teacher. There shouldn't be such a thing as, well, I'm a science teacher, but I also need to teach my kids how to read and write in scientific terms. And we're not to a place where teachers feel like they have the ability to do that, because it's like, let's cover all this content, we're going to shove it all in the kid's head, we're pouring it into them just like they're a pitcher, and we're pouring all the water into the pitcher, and now it's spilling over. They can't
They can only
keep
retain
it all.
so
They
much.
can only retain so much. And so we really need to narrow it down, because you know what? My son said it best. He's 23 now. Mom, why would I ever need to go to college when everything I need to know I can look up on this? Right? So we're in a different age. And yes, we have to teach our kids how to read and how to write and how to communicate in multiple forms. And that is the core. So the core is really around critical thinking skills, communication skills. It's really around teaching the kids the skills they need to be successful. Content will come later, right? And we teach that through content, but we don't need to teach all of the content. Let's teach some core content and go really deep so that we can communicate about it and think about it.
We have a
Yes, thank you. I do have a question. I have been in public school for over at least probably 27 years. And then I was in private school at a high level day boarding school in Austin, Texas. And then I opened my own school, and I've had that for 17 years. And my question is this. In Texas, I have found it to be extremely difficult to actually make changes. I feel like the schools and the students are carrying the burden of it not being successful, but unless you have governmental backup on this, and so that's really kind of my question is, what pathway can we develop that we can actually affect real change? Because everybody's talking about this, but I know in Texas, it never happens. So that's really why I opened my own school. And so I'm very curious to hear, what are your ideas about really helping us to affect change? Thank you.
What's different about your own school?
My own school, it's a private school, and I don't have to follow the same policies as public school. And I realized after I was at this day boarding school for like 5 years, wow, the things that they are not held to, that public school is held to. And I'm a huge proponent of public school, and the majority of our citizens go there. And so I find it very sad that they just can't kind of make the change. I was very lucky to have Nelson Coulter, who was voted secondary principal of the year like over a decade in Texas, and I learned a lot from him. And he would come back when I was in public school and say, it's just not going to change. It's just not going to change. And I kind of see we're still there because, yeah, I'm not held to that same, those same guidelines, but public school does have to change. And I'm curious, how do y'all, what kind of pathway can we use to do that?
I'm hearing a connection between what Donna said and what you're saying around time.
Yeah.
That it's the time to process what the core requirements are to be a communicating good human, but to also incorporate and practice critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
And not lose sight that it's also our obligation to teach every child, no matter where they're at and what skills they come to us with.
Right.
So there's a whole other component of this conversation around education policy that we can't lose sight of.
And
Right.
I also want to make just one point about the fact that there's the faculty and there's the student, right? That's
Right.
a partnership. And that's what I refer to it as when I'm introducing my classes to my constituents. This is a partnership. I'm going to do my part, but you got to do yours. And the partnership really means that we both have to be engaged in this process. I can't be phoning it in. And it's very easy to do that when you've been doing it for a while, but you also see the results of You know, I get students where in an email, which means you have a whole keyboard.
Right.
And they're writing, you know, I seen where you posted. It makes my eye want to twitch. I mean, I'm just, why? And those are the kinds of things that, as an educator, and I also want to make this other point. There's a difference between being an educator and just being an instructor. And so we need to bridge that gap a little better as well. But to your question is, what can we do? We need to engage. We need to dial back in. We need to get them, students is who I'm referring to as them. We need to get students dialed back in to strive for excellence.
Right. I think maybe I didn't explain myself well on that. I think the teachers and the schools are doing the best job they can possibly do. And just like what you're talking about, what I'm talking about are the entities that govern the public schools. That, to me, is what needs to change. And somehow somebody has to help do that, because it doesn't matter what political area it is, how long, it's just still the same thing. Public schools in particular have to follow those guidelines. And I think teachers and the administrators, everything, have done a fabulous job. But I was really talking more like, you know, the state legislatures, things like that. How can we do that? And I won't talk about it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And your question is the exact question of why Dr. B and I connected several years ago in Northern Ireland at a castle. Very cool story. We'll tell you later. But that question of how do we change the system? So you have to understand education. How many of you in this room has education touched in some way? It better be 100%.
Right.
How many of you has healthcare touched in some way? Those are probably the only two things that 100% of hands should raise ever in this country, right? So the educational system is as big as our healthcare system, right? Or maybe slightly smaller. So we have to be cognizant of that, and that is why this is a behemoth to move. The Titanic doesn't turn on a dime, but our society has. And so to your point, what I have seen over time working at the state level and the university level and in multiple districts, large districts and rural districts, is that there are some really good practices. And your school, it sounds like, is the perfect example of something that's stepping outside of the box, doing things differently, being able to show success. There are also public schools who are doing that because they recognize that if a charter school can do some of those things, so can we. We just need to change the narrative a little bit. But what I see happening is that everyone is working in silos, right? You've got this school. So innovation, picture a map. You have a map of the globe, and you go to the ice cream store and you reach your hand into the bucket of sprinkles. You take out some sprinkles and you drop them on the map. Where every little sprinkle lands, those are little tiny places where innovation is truly happening and totally shifting education, but none of them are talking to each other. None of them are like banding together to push for change. And so what Dr. B and I have started doing is really bringing these innovative people together and publishing books. And we're going to be holding a conference for these people as well. We actually have a couple of our authors here at this conference. I see one sitting out in the audience right now, Lisa Polk. Sorry calling you out, but we've got to band together because what's our favorite phrase, Dr. B, from
we don't compete, we complete each other. And I want to really touch on Texas because I'm from Texas. But you know the problem is bigger than the school system. And hopefully during this new election, some problems will be gone. And oops, did I say that? Right? But it will. But I think we also need to create different pathways for our kids. And one of the problems that I've discovered going into different universities and colleges is that we're preparing our kids again for tests, skilled, right? taking tests, but we're not preparing them even for careers that we don't even know that are going to exist in the future. So how do we prepare them for those opportunities that are going to be opening up for our children? We're only preparing most of them, and we're introducing, and I'm not against doctors and lawyers and teachers, because, you know, we need them, but there's so many careers, and then we need to prepare our kids and move away from the sit and get system where you have to sit and learn. We have to get them to explore, to become researchers at a young age and really tap into their interests. No, you can't become this. These are the careers that exist.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I
that's
did-
my take on
Two
it.
questions out here.
One point I want to make before we move on to your
I think
point
Nicole
on
had the question.
how do we change that? The parents have to get involved as well. I mean, and when you're talking about K through 12, that's directly the parents and superintendents and school boards and all of that sort of thing. Higher education, which is what my space is, we don't really care about that. I can't really, once your kid hits 18, I can't talk to you about your kid's grades or anything like that. So it's sort of it's a two-pronged approach, in my opinion, that the parents have to be more engaged, dialed in, to make those changes, to force those changes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so there's like four people out here who've got questions. I've got one here.
This young
Five
lady
now.
had her hand
One,
up.
2, 3, 4, and then
Is it
5.
okay? She's had her hand up for a while.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
awesome.
I just wanted to piggyback on the parents, right? Like, what does policy change really look like around providing alternatives so that parents in different situations don't feel like they don't have that choice, or having choice around the way education is structured doesn't create new discrimination issues? So that was my question around, like, what does policy change even look like to provide these choices?
Right, and I think in charter schools that I've worked at, when you sign up for a charter school, like, the parent is actually signing an agreement that they're going to be involved, right? We don't do that in education at all. I haven't met very many parents who don't care about how their kids are doing in school, but they struggle to know how to support them because they were never supported, right? And so I think there are some places that have some really great family engagement programs, and we have a lot to learn from them, because involvement is not the same as engagement. Involvement is they're coming to open house, they show up to parent-teacher conferences. Engagement is they're involved in the decision making, they're involved in getting strategies to support their kids when they're at home. It's just a different ballgame.
Level of advocacy, I think.
Yeah. Oh.
So I live in Wisconsin, and Rhinelander, Wisconsin has had a group called Partners in Education, PI, for 15 years. They have been investing, 60 businesses have been investing in the school system. They hold numerous financial literacy, et cetera. So my question is, it's not policy like at the legislative level, but how much could relationships with the business community address some of what you're talking about?
Absolutely. And what you're doing in Wisconsin, how can that help Texas and New York and New Mexico and other places?
Okay, well, I have to then do a caveat to the filmmaker. I mean, I'm in the business world, and 20 years ago on Nightline, the design firm IDEO showed what design thinking looked like. They had teams of people create shopping carts.
Yep.
Fast forward, design thinking has permeated the business world because of one film on one TV show. I think we need an education channel like the Food Channel, and I think you should run it. Okay.
Yeah. Anyone out there? Oh, we've got a producer right here.
Yeah, here's your producer.
Afterwards. will say that at least at the higher ed level, we have PACs and business advisory councils that help us to develop the curriculum. But sometimes the businesses, if you don't take every one of their suggestions, I don't want to play anymore.
Right.
Right. And so it's one of those things where we have to manage our own expectations about what can and can't be done. But I also think that it goes back to being more, we keep using the word engaged with the business community. One of the things as an HR professional that I have seen is the complaints of businesses. Even when I'm looking at resumes, it's like, are you messing with me? Is this a prank? Those are the kinds of things, and that's not a compliment, obviously, right? You want to be able to have people be able to put cogent sentences together, to be able to speak well and represent themselves well. That goes back to that striving for excellence. That goes back to mediocrity not being sufficient. Well, I got a C, that's all right. In my world, never. I was upset with a B, quite frankly. So it's that kind of thing that we have to change the mindset of parents, students, educators, whatever it is, to speak to that a little better from a community standpoint.
Yeah, and I would add to that of shifting even the grading system, because my son is the perfect example of, well, I did the work. Why do I need to turn it in? I know I got a 0. A 0 means nothing to me. I don't care about numbers. I don't care about an A or a B. Like, give me relevance. He wants relevance. That's what our kids want.
Sure.
And
Let me say that in the area of higher education, I very much like the good the good doctor says, it is absolutely critical to engage business in not only curriculum formation, but also in delivering the work during the course of the year. At my school, we adapted our approach about 40 years ago under the rubric of make it real. What's going on in the textbook is all well and good, but it's the real world where the rubber hits the road. And it's very important to bring the road into the classroom so that they get an experience of what it feels like. And so in that regard, I couldn't agree more with my colleagues' comments. I will tell you that there is a certain amount of resistance that I've seen in business lately, principally because their ability to deduct certain activities with educational institutions now is a cap. It used to be wide open. But that's getting down into the weeds. I take your point.
I do want to add that in Texas, because I was an educator and director in special education, and we partnered up with some businesses, and what we did, we would put our special education students there, prepare them, and we would send mentors with them at the job place. And it was amazing. Like, I loved watching them just grow and being placed there.
The school's trying to fit something like that into these parameters that have been set by our policies. Like those policies, we're adding more policies to become more innovative, but we're not taking away the old policies that are keeping us stuck in the system. That's got to change.
And I believe that what businesses are looking for are workers who can collaborate, who can strategize, who can think outside the box. As an early educator, I'd like to see our sandboxes, our Legos, and our water tables go with kids all the way through high school, because that's where the innovation is happening. That's where the creativity is allowed to spread. We're not very good at that. We're very good at putting things, as Donna said, into silos. I also think that our businesses are looking not necessarily for experts in their fields. They're looking for those that can think with someone else to work together. Oh, guess what? Aren't those the skills that we do really well in early childhood?
I would like, as an employer, to have some employees that have competence skills. skills that go back to those core bases that we talked about. Because the policies that are, and I'm a mom of two, so I can speak from that, and I've been through college, so I've been through the education system. But what I'm seeing as an employer is the policies aren't matching up what I needed as business skills. And that is starting to change my business and have an impact to it, not for the better. When I can't get employees to show up on time, I can't get employees to decide that, it's important to finish that one email or that one phone call to that person, to build a relationship with somebody, to rather come in and shut their door than to talk to everybody else in the office. That's impacting my business negatively. That's not helping. I want somebody, I can teach them a lot if they have the base. I can't teach them the base because they think they don't need that. They think it's above it. They think it's old school. It's not old school. It's missing the communication. And there's a big disconnect, especially what I'm hearing here, between the educational policies and what businesses need. And we need innovative thinkers and people who can think out of the box, but we also need them to have the skill set to be a competent person to begin with. Somebody that's you want to hire. Somebody who doesn't think that the employer owes them, something that they can contribute to the business with, something they can feel a part of. They are so disconnected now from everything, they don't understand how to be part of a business, how to really think of, oh, that's a new product. I can make that mine. I can help the business do that. They might be able to think of the box, but they don't have that relationship to figure out what to do with that piece. That's the big disconnect I'm seeing as an employer.
Question right here. Yep. Yeah. You've been waiting patiently. Thank you.
Thank you. Want to kind of challenge something a little bit. I apologize. I'm known as the challenger. Everybody
That's
thinks
okay.
that I challenge things way too much.
We need those.
Yeah.
We need those.
So I'm an adjunct professor at Brandeis University. I teach specifically online, asynchronous. That's my passion. My day job is in the business world. So I kind of have that connection between the two, which I think is helpful. And I like your idea of building that portrait of a graduate. But I wonder if that exercise, I think it's valuable because it teaches what it means to be bridging that gap between the education and the professional world. How does that avoid, this is a two-part question, by the way, how does that avoid the one-size-fits-all approach? Because you've got this goalpost that is very well defined, knowing that the folks that you're going to want working for your business most likely might not fit that exact mold, right? So how do you use that and avoid the one-size-fits-all? And then how do you build policy around that? Because we all know policy moves at the speed of molasses, if that fast, right? And the definition of what it means to be successful professionally and personally changes rapidly, right? You talked about collaboration. The definition of collaboration changed dramatically in 2020, obviously as a result of a global pandemic, but it continues to evolve quickly. Quickly is an understatement, right? You mentioned email. Who uses email, right? I want people to be able to write, but I can't specifically say email because nobody uses email anymore in the professional world. And so how do you avoid the one-size-fits-all, and then B, how do you build policy around that is agile, I guess, if you will?
I think it's a combination of things. So in New York State, one of the things in 2 years, it will no longer be a requirement for students to take Regents exams in high school to demonstrate that they have mastered all of the content, right? Instead, if New York State or any state is going to be successful in that, they need to be grading based on competencies, right? Based on the critical thinking skills. And I have been part of schools that do that. So I can look at a student's report card and say, when a parent is saying, my child is so frustrated, what do I do? And I can look at a report card and say, well, she's comprehending everything in all of her subjects. She's able to communicate in all of her subjects, but she's struggling with writing in all of her subjects. So now I have a writing problem, and I can go to all the teachers and say, we need to ramp up our writing because we've got kids like this one who's struggling in all classes. And now we can develop those writing skills because now we have something to go off of. We're not, yes, learning some basic content is important. We have to teach kids how to do that. But the skills, if we're grading the skills across the board, they're gonna get the skills because those are important. And we can easily say, no matter what job you get, you're gonna have to know how to communicate. You're gonna have to know how to email and talk and to your boss and to the clients and everything else. They get that. But when a kid asks their geometry teacher, and this is a real story, when will I ever use a proof? And the geometry teacher says, well, probably never. Yep. That happened in December for my son. Guess what happened with his geometry scores the rest of the year? Failed all year long for the rest of the year. I don't know when you're going to use it. Now, if we had actually said, we were going to use proofs, because I would say, well, we're going to use proofs, we would be having conversation, and he'll be like, well, if this, then this, then this, then this. And I said, Evan, you just did a proof. Mom, you're just supposed to say that because you're a teacher. Really? It's the concept I want you to understand. And once you understand the concept of what a proof is, then you can do the mathematical proofs. But you're going to use it all your life in different ways. That would have been a different conversation with that math teacher. So we have to make things relevant. And just like Dr. B said, so the other piece of Portrait of a Graduate that New York State is doing is they're creating pathways. So students can pursue art and music. They can pursue sciences. And if they still want to take those Regents exams because that's the way they think and they want to memorize all this content, that will still be an option for them. But we have to have pathways for our kids so that they're learning all the skills. Once you have the skills, the content doesn't matter. You can learn the content and shift your career any way you want. But without the skills, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And then we had a question over there.
And this, how do I live in this world? Like when everything is always scary. Mm-hmm. So we're expecting them to come and learn how to read and how to write and how to do math. But how do you support them? How does policy help support the mental health of our students when they're always in survival mode?
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure policy does. I think it's a function of training the educators to be mindful. And again, here's that word again, engage, to know when someone needs maybe additional support. Westcliff, where I teach full-time, has they're a majority of international students. So clearly there's some of the students are impacted by what's going on in Iran, in Ukraine, in other areas. And as I said, if they're in crisis, they're not learning anything. Mm-hmm. So how do we figure out the academic rigor of it all in addition to ensuring that they're supported? And that goes back to I, as an educator, being able to say, you know what, I know that this was due on Sunday, but I'm going to give you a couple extra days. And what else can, and asking them that question, what can I do to support you? Not enable, not coddle, not be the crutch, but be a support. And that's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing. And I will say, I do education of trauma in schools, and oftentimes I'm given 20 minutes for a PD day.
Yeah.
I need 3 hours in order for teachers to learn that.
But this is also shifting school as a safe place for children and their families. And that needs to be based on the format that we welcome everyone here. You are all equal in our eyes. We care deeply about how you are feeling. And when we are feeling comfortable in that part, then we can do the academics. The old Maslow-Bloom thing, because I never know which one comes first.
Right.
But that's the
Yes, and also teachers are also impacted and having
the
to hold
teachers
space.
have to feel exactly that same welcome.
So a challenge I have, are there EAPs available that can be integrated into policy for supporting teachers? And
I think that's a great question. And And in fact, we invite you to our next
Yeah,
roundtable
really.
that we're going to have because we have trauma and behavior. That's a big discussion that we want to dive into and really find out what is happening around the world with this trauma that's occurring. And at the same time, also not just keeping traditional schooling anymore. We have to have the online, the hybrid, and of course the charter schools that are there. But there has to be variety instead of just the traditional schooling.
Is it okay if I just add a quick
Sure.
like follow-up? So I'm a psychologist, and I used to do like after school teaching for a little bit, so I have a little bit of my foot in both worlds too. And my question is, how as healthcare providers, mental health care providers, can we have more dialogue with the schools? Because I personally, I would love to go into schools and also do like trauma informed, didactics or something. I also specialize in autism, and I know there's a lot of kids who are autistic or have ADHD, and they don't even know how to communicate some of the traumas that they're experiencing. So how do we give not just the knowledge to the teachers, but the language to the students as well who may be going through these things?
And that's a big problem that's happening right now. I hate to go into ICE a little bit, but they're arresting some of these children that are autistic, learning disabled, with other disabilities that can't communicate that they have immigration status. Sorry that I'm going into this, but it's a great need. And then they're put into these facilities and going into big trauma even more. Right,
So I
because they
think we
can't
have, like,
communicate. So what do we do?
We have like 1 minute. Oh, our time's up. We could stay here and talk all day with you.
Can he ask us a question? That gentleman?
No, our
No?
time, their time.
We are-
their time is up.
Sorry.
So let's keep this conversation going. Come back and talk with Dr. B and I, and we're in the back left corner when you walk in the room over there. Would love to keep this conversation going because we complete each other, we don't compete, and we don't have all the answers. And this room certainly doesn't have all the answers, but we can figure a whole lot out together, right? So we can put a big dent in things. So we want to talk to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Well,